Investors are typically most comfortable investing locally, and over the years we've seen a rise in foreign entities registering in the US, preferably a Delaware C Corp. But what if an entrepreneur is interested in international markets like Africa? In this video, we highlight a rapidly growing market in the African region. So whether you're an American entrepreneur interested in doing business in Africa, or you're an investor interested in investing in the continent, this video is for you. We have a growing audience of emerging fund managers that are African, and also those who are in the States and looking to do business in the African continent. And we hear about the U.S. Virgin Islands and places such as these. But what do you think about the Mauritius ecosystem as far as for emerging fund managers?
It's very well established. You've got a very clear regulatory framework. You've got a clear litigatory environment, lots of free trade agreements. You've got non-double taxation agreements. There's a lot of incentive to being in Mauritius. There's, it's a friendly tax environment. It's relatively low cost. It is actually the preferred jurisdiction, right? It's actually the preferred jurisdiction. If you're doing business Pan-Africa, and it's not just for fund managers, if you're doing business Pan-Africa, Mauritius is in fact the go-to. But it's more of a headquarters, as in parent co. Operations now are moving to the Middle East, and they're moving to Dubai. So you'll have a holdco, right, structure that capitalizes on non-double taxation agreements, free trade agreements, etc., headquartered in Mauritius. But operations are typically headquartered elsewhere, right? The supportive framework that Mauritius offers to the marketplace is largely regulatory. The population is a relatively small population. And so to find highly credentialed workforce capable of undertaking the roles required within fund management or active investment activity, that's typically done elsewhere. And so it's really fundamentally, it's an offshore jurisdiction, not unlike Cayman, not unlike BVI. It works in much the same capacity. It's known to be as such. And I think that's going to continue to be, sort of the driving force as, Africa grows, that Mauritius continues to sort of be the offshore base financial hub for businesses that are doing business on mainland Africa.
Do you think it sort of have this, one thing I've observed over the years with entrepreneurs in the African ecosystem that are looking to do business or entice U.S. investors, what's typically done is registering in the U.S., getting a C Corp, a Delaware C Corp. Would you say that's sort of the association in Mauritius in wanting to do business in the African ecosystem? Or what would you liken that to?
It's similar. I mean, when you talk about structuring out of Delaware, most entities structure out of Delaware now, just because it's commonly done. I don't think that necessarily most people realize why they structure out of Delaware necessarily. But it's a tax light state. It's a reporting light state. That's not exactly true for Mauritius. Mauritius is pretty heavy when it comes to reporting and compliance. Not on the same level as Delaware. Mauritius KYC, AML compliance, especially when you're running bank accounts in Mauritius, pretty top heavy on compliance, right? So, And that's why I say from a holdco structure, to capitalize on non double taxation and free trade, Mauritius can make a lot of sense. From an opco perspective and a banking perspective, Mauritius, unfortunately, is not as favorable as, for example, UAE, and it's my opinion, but it's also the opinion of a lot of large cap enterprises that are headquartered in Mauritius, but most of their operations are, for example, in India or South Africa, or UAE or Europe. Right? There's a lot of companies that are headquartered, South African companies that are headquartered in Mauritius, but their operations are out of London, for example. So it really, it's favorable, and it's still preferred, but it's nuanced, and it's not exactly in the same, space that I would categorize, for example, Delaware or Wyoming in the United States. It is, it's an opportune jurisdiction, but it's not exactly the same sort of nuances that you have with Delaware.
Yeah, and I expect that. But these things are good to ask. As you mentioned, many are not aware as to why they're even registering in the U.S. to begin with, and that just reminds me I should probably share an article regarding this conversation in the chat. So for those listening, you'll be able to find something in the footnote for this conversation here.